Hello and welcome to Shooting the Shit. We're so excited. This is a brand new piece of content that we've been wanting to create for such a long time. I don't know if you tune in for our Friday Facebook Live sessions that we've been doing for a while, but they are very business orientated and they're focused around various issues that businesses are facing. We did it in response to COVID, but it's something that we're going to carry on. But it's very much around a sort of a businessy, being professional type of vibe to it. And we wanted to do something that was a little bit more us, because if you've ever worked with Grow Traffic, you'll know that whilst we are very professional in the fact that we get the job done and we do what we say we're going to do, we're not perhaps your average business people. We don't turn up to meetings in suits, and we've all got various kind of facial piercings and tattoos, and we speak our minds. So we thought, why don't we do a piece of content? It might become a podcast. It might stay as a Facebook Live. We'll see how it goes. But just something that reflects our views a little bit more and allows us to, I don't know, shoot our mouth off a little bit, to be honest. So we've called it Shooting the Shit. And we thought each week, Hannah and I will get together and we will talk to amazing women, maybe not exclusively women, but for now women, because we know so many awesome women who have so many awesome opinions, and we want to ask them about them. And so this is
couldn't find anyone. So this week we've got Marisha.
I just turned up and I'm like, hey.
She's really regretting that she answers her WhatsApp messages now. So thank you. So I am Rachel Wynall, for those of you that don't know me, from Grow Traffic. And who else have we got? Hannah, who are you?
I'm Hannah, also from Grow Traffic.
And
I'm are you going to say it for me? I'm Marisha from Noise and various other things as well.
And Noise bought Marmalade.
Marmalade and networking. Yeah.
We got a box of marmalade through the post today. 4 jars of marmalade, and we've never been so excited.
You'd have to make some bread.
Yeah, no, we need to make our own bread to eat the marmalade with. Anyway, We're not here today to talk about marmalade, much as we would like to. We are here today to talk about Black Lives Matter and the Black Lives Matter movement that has been happening. Obviously, because this is still a Grow Traffic, piece of content, we are going to look at it with a businessy lens on. But if you have come here looking for any answers, we haven't got them. We're not going to give you news reports. We're not going to give you really any facts. We just try to give you our opinions, and we want to tell you what we think about things. So first of all, I'm going to ask each of you, I want to know what your background is. Everybody is coming at Black Lives Matter, obviously, from the point of view of from a kind of unique perspective, especially given in Britain that we're a big melting pot. So, Hannah, I'm going to come to you first. What is your personal background, and what have you been seeing in terms of Black Lives Matter recently?
Personally, my background, what do you mean? Like, what's my ethnicity?
Yeah, what's your ethnicity?
Okay, so I am technically, I suppose, mixed. So our mother, mine and Rachel's mother, was English, and white English, white British, waspish, if you will, in every sense of the word. And our father is half German and half Guyanese, but Indo-Guyanese. So there's a kind of strong West Indian heritage there. So our cultural background is really mixed. We look white, so that always made life a little bit easier. Our dad was always really adamant, and I'm saying our, just in case people don't know, I'm Rachel's sister. I'm not like got some sort of split personality problem. So our dad was always really adamant that we were just white, just British, just, no different from anybody else. But, that doesn't always come through. From a kind of personal perspective, our dad was immigrated into this country in the 60s. and went from kind of a middle class background into a immigrant, kind of status with put in a hostel and things like that. So for us growing up, it was really important that we kept hold of that heritage, but also that we worked really, really hard. And there was no kind of excuse that we were allowed to slack off or whatever. So it really pisses me off when you see people saying that immigrants don't contribute to society, because my family emigrated to this country and contributed to society, and I don't know what the right context is, and we are second generation immigrants and we contribute to society, and economics isn't a minus in kind of, you don't minus one from one when you do economics. So there's more to the contribution of immigrants than their financial contribution. So I suppose that's a really rambly answer there.
Yeah, well, and my internet cut out for quite a big chunk of that. So to be honest, I've got no idea what you said anyway.
Oh, it was insightful, intelligent, and hilarious.
I bet it was. Marisha, what is your cultural heritage?
Well, yeah, just to kind of point out that we kind of had this conversation about having a chat before we started talking about what we were going to talk about today. So I'm not just a token person that's rocked up on this call. Hi, yeah, we found one. I just had to address that first.
I've never even thought of that.
So there we are. The rest of the time, we never speak to her. We only brought her up.
Yeah. So my heritage is, my mum's white. She's white, and my dad is Jamaican. So that's kind of it. I grew up in Leicester. I'm from Leicester, and so a lot of my experiences, I guess, really, are maybe not the same as they are across the UK, because Leicester is a massive melting pot for all different types of ethnicities and backgrounds and things like that. And actually, coming away from Leicester now, because I don't live there now, I'm in Yorkshire, I kind of I appreciate that, actually, that I had that, and I didn't think anything of it, I guess, at the time. So it's not like I was the only brown kid in school. There were others, and had friends and families, and so it wasn't a thing, I guess. Then I'm not saying that there wasn't out and out blatant racism about stuff. That's a different thing for me. But that whole you're different kind of wasn't there, because we were around it already. But in terms of heritage, I guess it's not that long ago, I guess, that people came over on boats and moved into the UK. And I would expect, and I've heard, that other people in my family, like the older generation, have experienced other things, and did come into things in a different way. But yeah, I kind of take, my growing up in Leicester to be a real positive thing, actually, because it was a mix.
Yeah. I mean, there's 5 years difference between Hannah and I. So I was born in London. We lived in Hackney, and we lived on the 16th floor of a tower block in Hackney. And when I lived there, Hackney was really bloody rough. It's quite posh now and gentrified, but it was rough. And it was a really, really multicultural society. And as Hannah says, our dad came over in the 60s. He was an immigrant, but our granddad was of Indo-Caribbean heritage. So our upbringing had a big slice of that kind of Afro-Indo-Caribbean heritage. We eat curry, and we wrote it, and we listened to samba music and reggae, and it's a real cultural mixing pot. Food-wise, it's kind of Indian, and musical, it's Caribbean, and there's all sorts of a mix to it. But yeah, for the first few years in London, I was surrounded by people of all sorts of different colours and religions, and there was a big Jewish area near where my mummy and granddad lived. So, again, all sorts of different religions and people that looked very different. And then we moved up to Lancashire, and Hannah was born in Lancashire, and I started going to primary school then. And until that point, it never occurred to me that my family was any different to anybody else's. And it was only when I started going to primary school and other kids started saying to me, "Why is your dad a different colour to everybody else's?" his dad. I'm like, well, he's not. He's just dad coloured. Like, what are you talking about? And that's what we sorry. And we have been very lucky because, as Hannah says, we look white. Hannah and I look white. We don't look like there's any kind of other sort of ethnicity in our heritage whatsoever. So, we get to pass for white Anglo-Saxon. And so because of that, I think the racism that we've encountered has been at that one step removed. I do remember, and I'm sure you'll remember this, Hannah, we went into a pub in Chorley once, and all right, it wasn't the most salubrious pub, but we got more or less instantly kicked out because the guy was like, "Are you Packies? We don't let Packies in this pub, get out." And so we went, and there have been instances where there's been sort of really subtle racism against my dad more than against us. But it has been subtle. We haven't experienced the really overt stuff. But I do remember my dad telling us the stories about in the 60s where there was really overt racism that he encountered. So I think it's interesting, isn't it, how people's perception of racism in Britain is obviously coloured by what they've experienced.
I think as well, our experience of systemic racism hasn't been there because we don't look mixed in any way, really. So, and I think I was reading something on social media the other day that was saying, if you've never really experienced racism, if you are white and all your family are white and you've never experienced that, then you don't see that there is a problem because there isn't a problem to you and it's not in your face. Whereas if you see it with other people or your peer group or whatever, then obviously you do acknowledge that there's a problem. And I think I've lived in two very white areas, so like Lancashire where I brought up and Yorkshire where I am now. I am as ethnic as it gets in a lot of my circles, and I think that clouds people's judgment massively. That you just don't see different cultures at all on your doorstep or in school or anything. So I think that's really problematic that we're kind of clumped.
It does genuinely worry me that because. Sorry, we've got as could have been predicted, we've got a lag on the Wi-Fi.
Marisa, why don't you speak now while she's distracted?
Well, I've got 2 minutes. Go. Well, I think it's it's a strange thing because I think this whole movement at the moment, I kind of look at it in a couple of ways. I've not really kind of, gone out there with a massive, noise and opinion and things like that. I kind of sit back and listen and look and think because that's how I feel about it. It's made me think about a lot of things. And I think there's a couple of things really, I think the way that I kind of manage or deal with racism, I think is I guess, I just kind of, I feel sorry for people, quite frankly. And I think the times when people have been overtly out and out racist are very slim, i.e., you're black and, you're not allowed in, that kind of, thought. There's a lot of, I guess, ignorance around this kind of stuff. And I think that a lot of the kind of first impressions or the initial reactions from people are built from that. It's pure ignorance rather than, true racism. It's that, we've not met someone like you before, almost that, you can always see it in people's faces sometimes. So for me, I think I agree completely, with that, I guess, idea of, well, there isn't a problem because I'm not racist. And for me, the conversation here, and I don't just mean here, I mean actually within the UK, because I think, BLM is a massive thing. It is quite frankly different in the States as it is here. And I think the issue here is that we kind of do need to address that kind of, that white privilege thing. And that's what it is, that really, that's the conversation that needs to be had. And I think people trying to understand that is really difficult as well, because it's like, but I'm not racist. But I mean, we're not saying that you're racist, you know. It's the fact, you know, I had a conversation with someone the other day and he's like, oh, I didn't think of it like that. I was like, well, there you are. That's it. That's exactly it. You know, and that's really hard to grasp for people.
I don't even think sometimes it's I'm not racist. I think sometimes it's I'm not privileged. Like, you know, if you've got people who are living kind of day to day and struggling to make ends meet and, you know, accessing food banks and stuff, and you say to them, you're white and so you've got so much privilege, then they're thinking, fuck off. Like, I ain't got privilege. I'm really struggling and it's somebody else's fault. And like, there's a lot of narrative in the press and from the government about how, you know, it's our group's fault, whether that group is immigrants or Muslims or people on the dole. It's always some other fucker's fault, and it's never their fault, is it? It's never the government's fault. And I think that's a big stumbling block to getting genuine equality for all people in the UK, that there's so much inequality that clusters people together, that when you then start to try and say to people, but you do have a level of privilege, it just, you know, it's just difficult for them to see, because that's understandable, really, I suppose.
And it is also what they've experienced in their own lives, because it's very, you know, if you have never lived in a multicultural area, if you have never seen racism or been the victim of it or any kind of prejudice, you don't comprehend it. And that's not because you're a bad person, and it's not, you know, because there's anything wrong with you, and it's not that anybody is trying to attack people for that. It's just that you don't see it and it hasn't been in your world. And like you said, Marisha, it's about showing people, well, just because it hasn't appeared on your radar doesn't mean it isn't happening on other people's radars. And I think that's the hard thing that people struggle to understand, isn't it? It's like, well, I don't think because I've never experienced it. And it's tough, isn't it? That's getting that point across. So I'm conscious that we gave ourselves half an hour for this podcast and we've already used 20 minutes of it. We're going to really struggle with this one, aren't we?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go.
How do we feel about hashtag All Lives Matter?
Oh gosh, we had half an hour, girls. I mean, this is half an hour, isn't it? I mean, God.
Can we succinctly say what the problem with hashtag All Lives Matter is?
I don't know whether we can succinctly say it, but to me, when people say that, it's gaslighting. That's what it feels like. It's like when somebody is completely invalidating somebody else's point of view, and it's not about it. Or saying Black Lives Matter is not saying Black Lives Matter more than anybody else's life, or Black Lives Matter more than white lives, or, you know, I think my life is more important. It's not that. It's just saying I want a Black life to matter as much as anybody else's life. And there's that really good cartoon going around, isn't there, at the moment, about, you know, somebody's fundraising for breast cancer, and there's a guy next to them going, all cancers matter. And, you know, somebody's campaigning, raising money for mental health, and they're like, all health conditions matter. And that's exactly it. It's not, it's so devaluing and taking away somebody's point of view if they say all, you know, Black Lives Matter, and you return it with all lives matter. Of course, nobody's saying they don't.
Yeah, Risha.
I that's it. I mean, I think the best way that I can kind of, you know, talk about any of this kind of stuff is to give examples, and that's when people start to realise then and think a little bit differently. And it's not necessarily about to answer the question, I guess, really, but I think, you know, the conversation I had recently was, you know, well, what colour are plasters, you know, up until fairly recently, you know, skin coloured, what's skin coloured? Well, it's pink. Well, we're not. And that is an example of why it's different. And the response is, well, I didn't realise, or I didn't think about it that way. It's like, exactly, there's the point. And I think, you know, taking it, you know, back to business a little bit, you know, does it really make a huge difference in business, you know, as to, you know, what your ethnicity is and all of that kind of stuff? And that's another interesting question, I guess, that I've kind of been thinking about, because actually in reality, there's loads of other stuff as well. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's not just about being a different colour or having a different ethnicity. You know, there's also being, you know, female in a male-dominated industry. You know, there's just the just being yourself, being authentic, being out there. You know, in an industry that kind of dictates that you wear, or you should wear, a suit and all of that kind of stuff. You know, so I think, you know, all kind of, you know, that racism, you know, big thing, you know, thing that's out there at the moment, as it's, you know, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that kind of is tied up with all of that, really. So I don't
Samara's just commented, hi Samara, she's watching, she's just put ballet shoes. It's a really good point, isn't it?
Exactly.
You buy your ballet shoes for your kids and they're pink.
Yeah, exactly. And there's that, and that's the whole, you know, that's the best way, I think, for people to start to think. Give them an example and watch their face as like, oh, why, you know, and that's it, really.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you know, if we want to bring it back to business, as you said, it is those little things, isn't it? When businesses go say, you know, oh, how are we going to accommodate this? It's a little bit like when the Me Too movement happened, and everyone was suddenly going, well, what? How are we? You know, we can't pay a woman a compliment anymore. It's like, no, you can pay her a compliment, you just can't squeeze her ass, you know, or say that it's not really nice in that top or something. Like, you know, but it's a similar kind of reaction you're getting now. Is how, oh my God, well, how are we going to accommodate this now? And it's like, though, like you say, just those little things. Just think of those little things and be a little bit considerate. That's all you have to do. Nobody's asking you to suddenly fundamentally change your entire business, unless your business is fundamentally racist, in which case, yeah, you're going to have to But yeah, most people, it's just considering, you know, other people's points of views and other people's perspectives and bringing those into the conversation, isn't it? I think, Marisha, you work for quite a big one.
I think as well, it's the way that companies, like, it's not about how we're going to tackle this now. It's about how can we, as a business, change our approach to hiring and training and promoting and talking to people, and our marketing that encompasses all people now. So, like, I've noticed stock photography in the last few days, in the last couple of weeks, has gone a lot more multicultural, which is about fucking time. But also, like, I used to work in a really large college in a very multicultural town in Rotherham, where you know, a lot of the population are Polish. There's a large Afghan and Pakistani population, so a lot of the students were multicultural, but all my colleagues, with the exception of about 3, were white British. Yeah. And that, you know, that's a real disparity. And I think businesses and organizations need to look at how they are accessing areas of the community and how they are enabling people of other cultures to apply for jobs there. And it might just be that, you know, by putting jobs in the Guardian and the TES, you're not accessing all annals of society. And I think it's that, rather than, you know, now we need to write a policy. It's just a genuine ambition to be more equal.
Well, it's the same fight that the feminists were fighting kind of 20, 30 years ago, isn't it? It's like representation. We have to be able to, and it is true, you know, you have to be able to see the change in order to be the change. And that sounds like a soundbite. But I mean, for example, you're absolutely right about the stock photography. So I'm a Soroptimist, and I've been involved in the Soroptimist website working part. If you don't know who the Soroptimists are, guys, Google them because they're amazing. I've been involved in redesigning the Soroptimist website recently. And the Soroptimists, we are an international organisation, SIGBI, which is the Soroptimists International Great Britain and Ireland. We actually constitute a lot of the old Commonwealth countries, so the Caribbean and India and Nepal are all involved in SIGBI. And yet, if you look on our website, we're getting slightly better, but every single face was white. And even when we were doing projects, you know, we've done a project in Nepal, the photos still look like it was white people all doing the project in Nepal and not, you know, Nepalese people. And it's crackers because it's hard to get those sorts of stock photography and get that get that representation through. And so we wrote a statement that we put out after the Black Lives Matter things cause started happening. But I said, it's more important. Yeah, we could put a statement out. Of course, we need to put a statement out. Everybody needs to. But what's more important is that we actually speak to our optimists who are not white and find out, what do they think and what do they think needs changing. But also that we just change some bloody photos on the website and make it look a little bit more representative. And I think that's a good starting point for a lot of businesses, isn't it? Like I said, be the change that you want to see.
Mm.
I think that's it. There's a lot of...
No, go on, sorry.
No, I was just also going to say, I think that at the moment as well, there's also a lot of fear in actually having that conversation though. And like one of the things that, someone said to me is like, oh, why is it kind of like got to this kind of stage and now we all feel uncomfortable? I'm like, good, I'm glad you do. Right, because that means that something's not right. Just have a conversation. Do you know what I mean? But I think on the flip side, people also need to kind of be willing, I guess, to educate too. Now, I'm not saying that you go back to school literally and tell people what's what. But I think we do also have a part to play in educating each other, be willing to learn, come back with a different view. It's okay to be wrong, to be educated and then change. I'm all for that, but yeah, I think it's such a big old thing, and I think that there's got to be, a willing and, like Hannah says, an acceptance and like wanting to embrace other people. And I think also there's a fear, around people of mixed culture, mixed heritage, because actually I don't fit in to BLM, actually. So I'm also not in that conversation. And, bit of, and I guess the same with you guys as well, really.
Yeah. It's a massive...
somewhere once that mixed race people or like mixed race children, they never quite fit into either culture, to any of their cultures, because they're kind of half in, half out of each. And I think it is true, and depending on who you talk to, I don't know if you find this, Rachel and Marisha, but depending on who you're talking to, you kind of adopt a stance in your mind, like, right, today I'm going to be white, or today I'm going to be British, or today I'm going to be German, or today I'm going to be Guyanese, or whatever, like you kind of like adopt a persona in a way, which is insane, because but yeah, just never quite fit into each. But then that means that you can comfortably straddle both.
I agree. I think that's a really interesting thing as well for me, because I love that about it almost as well. That if I can, I can scrape my hair back and look, completely different, to how I do when my hair's like this, or I can straighten it and look completely different again. And I've never had an issue with any of that. I don't feel the need to have to explain why or who. I'm just like, well, I can, so I will. Yeah. Whereas I guess other people's, kind of experiences are sometimes not as positive, or maybe they're, are not able to deal with it in the same kind of way, and I think that, really does boil down to you just being comfortable with yourself and going out there and being able to kind of just be that.
It does. That when they have those things on Facebook, there's like, how whatever insert word are you, and there was one that was like, how Lancashire are you? There were like 20 Lancashire sayings, and I read them all, and I was like, oh my god, I didn't realize they were Lancashire sayings. I thought they were just things people said, because I use every single one. But then there was also how to tell if you grew up with Caribbean parents. Yeah. It was like 20 things on that, and I was like, oh my god, yeah, that everything is the ting. Where's the
that's the thing.
Be like a multitude of anything. Yeah. Everything in our house is pass me the ting, man. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. It's where the hell do you fit in all of that? I am Lancashire. I'm a Lancastrian, but yeah, I'm also a bit Guyanese and I'm a bit German, and all those things kind of combine. And I do think that must be hard. It probably has taken me until I'm in my late 30s to reconcile all of that. I remember when I was growing up and I was talking to some of my Guyanese relatives, and I felt really like, I don't belong here. This is not kind of my place. And yet it was. But it's a tough road to tread, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
We're coming up to time, so just we haven't talked about business very much at all in all of this. How do you think businesses should respond? Samara again has put a really good comment on, which is just be authentic. Big empty gestures are absolutely pointless, and there's been so many businesses that have come out recently. You've seen them kind of make a statement, and then nothing's going to follow from it. It's like, well, we've put a press release out now, so we're all right. We're going to be okay. But how should businesses respond? Hannah, what do you think?
It's true about the big empty gestures. Did you see the Conservatives' Father's Day message? The Conservative Party's Father's Day message. Oh, it was just a picture of a dad and a son, but the dad and the son were black. And God, the shit that came out of Twitter. Oh, this isn't representational of the 90% of the population. And now it's all going to the bloody dogs. Now it's just like, honestly, the racists are coming out of the woodwork. Yeah. I think, obviously I don't have an answer, but for us, it's about refusing to engage with the racists. Like, as a business, I don't ever want us to do business with people who don't hold values that are the same as us. And that's an official Grow Traffic statement. Like, if you're sitting there watching this and you're a racist, don't ring us.
Yeah.
It's about not enabling people to have abhorrent views, let alone I don't know how as businesses we can tackle the kind of the racism that's just so ingrained in society. But I think overt racism, we just need to shut that shit down immediately. As companies, and take a responsibility for not taking the money off people who enable that sort of trash.
Yeah, it has become so overt as well, hasn't it? I think that's what's shocked me over the past few weeks, especially on, obviously social media. But the fact that people have been saying things, and I've actually gone like, ugh. I've screenshotted a lot of people's posts. I've screenshotted more in the last few weeks than I think I've ever screenshotted in my life, because I just think, that this has gone beyond kind of being subtly racist to just being awful. I think that's what shocked me. So, Marisha, what would you suggest that businesses do?
Well, yeah, I mean, how massive is that? But I think, I kind of stick by the kinds of, not having a knee-jerk reaction to this kind of stuff. It's genuinely, it's thinking about it. It's, seeing what activities or what actions, can be improved or be changed to make, your business or your, the way that you act, the way that you kind of do things, more inclusive. And, it's that's across the board, really. I think inclusivity, and I agree, it almost is that. It's like, instead of, like what Hannah said earlier, not putting, an advert just in The Guardian, because actually, what that readership kind of looks like. You can think about that without even knowing, but also I think there's a huge amount to be said for actually asking questions as well. And I think, I'm not going to go into stats because I don't know them. But, there's some big stats in the UK about, black women being more likely to die in childbirth than white women. They don't.
She just got really good, and we lost her. She just got really good. No, she was good all along. That point was really interesting, and we lost her. Come back, Marisha.
Yeah, bugger it up. Do you know what, though? I mean, she's absolutely right. The point she was saying is absolutely spot on. But I think the thing that I know I need to get better at is going into different spaces. As a business, we do quite a lot of networking, but we tend to network in quite white spaces, and spaces where everybody looks quite a lot like us and has a similar background to us. And I think it's really important that, we get better at going in, finding different sorts of. I did the what was it called? It was with the Saffron Group. It was a couple of months ago. It was during Ramadan. It was I will fast for one day. That's it. I will hashtag I will fast for one day. And so I did Ramadan for what was it? well, it was over 24 hours that we fasted in the end. But that was really interesting because it was a networking group, the Saffron group. They're from Burnley, and they're not a group that I normally I hadn't interacted with or hadn't even come across. But somebody invited me to go and do it, one of our customers actually. And I went and did it, and it was really interesting to just do a little bit of business networking with a different set of people from a kind of different region. So I think that's on us as well as a business, that we have to do that.
Yeah, I think as well, like there's a kind of a big drinking culture in businesses where, you know, it's beers on a Friday. Oh, she's back. Go on. What were you saying?
I was off on one then, weren't I? I was like, well away. And I could say it. And you were like, no, where's she gone? And I was like, I don't know. Anyway.
What happened?
I don't know. It just like everything just turned off. Tech, hey, who knows?
Yeah,
I think, I was basically saying that I think there's a lot to be said for asking questions and asking why. And I think that's how people can do things differently. Because, okay, you see that, you know, the stats about, you know, X, well, then ask why. And more people need to be asking why. You know, there's all sorts of stuff. It's, isn't it the Windrush anniversary as well today? You know, that's only just started, you know, conversation about that. You know, if people want to get involved, ask why, you know, start making a noise about, you know, that kind of stuff, because that's when change will be made. You know, the whole thing about having different coloured plasters, it's only when black people and white people start to ask why, you know, that things have changed. So yeah, it's, you know.
You made a really good point before then, Marisha, because you said about how we get kind of awkward. People get awkward about asking it. Do you think, I don't know if that's a really British thing, that we don't like to ask questions of people, but I find it's a real barrier, isn't it, that somebody isn't going to ask you something because they think, oh, they might be, you know, if I ask them about their heritage, they might be offended. If I ask them why they're eating a roti, they might be offended. And I know, just bloody ask. It's quite, we're only going to learn about each other and each other's cultures if we have those conversations, aren't we?
Exactly. And I think maybe that's just an instant kind of reaction to, you know, that maybe that is it, you know, almost, you know, hidden racism, that you're not going to ask a question, or you're not going to stop someone in the street, or you're not going to, you know, compliment someone on their hairdo because you're worried about what the response will be or how other people may react, you know. Yeah. So I agree, you know, 9 times out of 10, someone's going to have a conversation with you, you know, if they ask a question, you know, as opposed to, you know, be an arsehole back. I'm not, there are some, let's not.
But that's the thing, isn't it? And people are usually really, really happy to have those conversations. You know, I remember when we were, when Leon was little, my little boy is 10 now, and I think he was about 3 or 4. And Leon has always been, you know, I grew up in a multicultural society. Leon's always grown up in a really, really white culture, and it does worry me. But I remember he saw a lady wearing a burqa. And he came up to me and said, why is that lady wearing a blanket over her head? And I was like, well, she's not, you know, it's a blanket. And I said, why don't you ask her? And he went up to her and he said, why are you wearing a blanket? But she answered him and she told him what it was about. And again, I think, you know, that is the only way we're going to start to tackle these prejudices, is by talking to each other, sitting down with each other and sharing, you know, sharing culture, sharing meals, sharing customs. That's how we will grow. And it frightens people. I get it. It frightens people that they're like, well, like, you're going to dilute my British culture. And it's like, no, you know, if you have a curry once in a while, it's not going to ruin your culture. You'll be all right.
And that's such a weird thing, though, that people think, like, if one person gets some sort of power, then that takes away a bit of somebody else's power. Yeah. And like I was saying earlier about one add one economics, you know, like, just because somebody else gets a right doesn't mean to say that you no longer have that right. Or just because somebody else is going to be stopped being, you know, disproportionately put in jail for crimes dependent on the colour of their skin, that doesn't mean to say that you are now going to start being put in jail more often. Like, it's okay if other people have their rights as well. And it's okay if other people celebrate their own culture within a different country. Like, why do we all have to eat chippy on a Friday night and drink bloody John Smith's. Like, why do we all have to do that? And also, if you are one of the like, if you're one of the people that sit there and say, oh, you know, they need to assimilate and they need to assimilate into British culture and learn to speak the language, and then you go to Spain and you have anything other than tapas every day, then you're an arsehole. So, like, I just think there's so much hypocrisy, there's so much fear, and I think it probably goes back to this lack of equality and lack of opportunity for people across the board at the moment, and just general economic inequality.
Yeah, and it's exactly what people said about feminism. And, you know, men in the 60s and 70s, they were like, well, women can't come and work in our companies because then we'll all be out of a job. And it's like, no, actually, there's enough jobs to go around. There's enough rights to go around. You know, there's enough space outside of prison for everybody not to have to be in prison. You know, we'll be all right. We'll be fine. We are coming up to time, and you know, as I say, this was supposed to be a session where we talked about something through a kind of business lens, and I always thought that was a tall order because we're more interested in the courses than we are in the business. But I would really like to thank both of you. Just very quickly to round off, kind of, where do you think we are going from here? Do you think that the past kind of month of the Black Lives Matter protest, do you think that has engendered real change? And do you think it's looking more promising now? Marisha, what do you think?
It's in as much as it means a conversation. I don't think it's going to change that in any way, shape or form. But I think, you know, it's a good thing for people to start talking. You know, simple as that.
Hannah, what do you think?
I'm pessimistic, really. I think it will go a bit like Me Too. I think there'll be a big noise and everyone will do it for a little bit. And I think some things will perhaps change. I think it's good that we are starting to move on from celebrating slave traders and institutionalized racism. But I think there's still enough arseholes out there to keep the racism alive in the world. And I think we're a really long way away from it. But I think every time this happens, I think we move one tiny step closer to genuine equality.
I agree. I think, you know, these are conversations that we have to have, and they are very, very long overdue. And it is great that we're having them now. And nothing is going to instantly change. Of course it's not. But we have had slave traders' statues have been removed. You know, street names have been renamed. Theatres have been renamed. All right, you know, the BBC might have gone a little bit silly in removing some Fawlty Towers episodes or whatever. But, you know, on the whole, people are starting to have that correct conversation and are starting to have the correct response to it. And so I'm quite hopeful. I think, yeah, we've not waved a magic wand. Of course, we're not. Racism isn't going to go instantly away. But we were long overdue taking this step and having this conversation. And I feel quite positive that we've had it. And I'm going to ignore all the racist people and carry on being positive and think that the world will change.
I don't like it, so I'm going to ignore it. That's it. Happy days.
Yeah, I do.
It's the same. Oh, go on. No, doesn't matter.
Well, it's 1:45, so thank you so much, both of you. I've really enjoyed our first shooting the shit. No doubt, Marisha, you will be back whenever we've got another black issue to talk about. We'll get you.
Turn up. So good. It's all good. I need a little sign that says BAME or POP. Person of colour, something like that. Be fine.
Token black person. I'll make you a badge. You'll be right. But no, it's been really good. Thank you so much to both of you. I don't know what we're talking about next week, but we do.
I want to do Me Too. Let's do Me Too next week.
All right, yeah. Let's talk about Me Too. Absolutely.
I'm not going to be on that one.
We're here for feminism and business. We're trying to combine the two. If anyone wants to come and join us, if anyone has a subject that they'd really like to jump on and talk to us about, we're more than welcome to have you on. So thank you so much, both of you. Have a really good week.
Bye.
Really appreciate